Hey, what's up? So, James, when you announced that you were doing a Fallout style challenge, I knew I had to join. So, what I made is the laser rifle from the Fallout universe. This is all EVA foam. Everything on here is EVA foam. This is a wooden dowel covered in EVA foam, but other than that, that's it. And yeah, it was a pretty fun build. I made one of these a long time ago and ended up selling it, even though I really, really loved it. So I thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity to make a new one. And best part about this is it'll go down here in my Star Wars basement. All right, check that out. Pretty sweet.
Train to the Plastic Underground. Approaching the station. Please stand away from the platform edge. Okay, so like always, we're starting off with a pattern. This is a template blueprint, basically, that I drew up a long time ago. So you can see on there, I got all these different measurements and drawings and references and stuff. So I'm gonna start off here with the body and the two end caps, basically the front and the back squares. So this is just some 10 millimeter high density foam. I'm cutting these strips out and gluing them together to make the long body, the long rectangle. The sides are wider than the top and bottom, but they're square, if that makes any sense at all. So it's perfectly square, but you're compensating for the thickness of the foam on the top and the bottom. So basically you cut 20 millimeters off of the top and bottom pieces to make them all the same thickness when they're glued together. So this makes a perfect square rectangle. So that is the body built. So now we can move on here to, I believe this is the front. This front piece, again, is, it's more of a square. This looks like it's actually the back, sorry. This is the, they both kind of look the same, except for the front is a little bit more longer in the front. So this is the box that goes on the back. So basically you're just making a box. Okay, then this is the front here. So these sides are longer because it hangs down lower than the body. And it is more thin. So there's the front, and there is the back box. So let's continue on with the back box here. This piece of foam goes on the inside of the box just to cap the inside off. These box parts too, the front and the back, are probably the most detailed because they have all these fins and stuff that we'll get to. Just cutting this chunk here at a 45 and putting it in there. This is the bottom. This little piece here is two chunks glued together and then rounded off the one corner. to make like a half circle. This gets glued up in the top left corner. Just like that. Here are the back fins. I drew these on paper and then traced all of these onto some 2mm foam. So if you cut those out of foam, the shorter ones get glued on top of this box. There's 4 of them. And then the taller ones get glued on the deep part of this box. And there is 5 of them, because they go on the sides too. Actually, there's 7 altogether. Yeah, because there's 2. So I use a little pair of tweezers for that too, obviously, because it's too, my hands are too thick. So I just use the Dremel there just to kind of buzz down the glue lines and stuff. And this is the detail on the back. I may have gone too thick on this, but it still looks pretty good. You're just kind of adding another panel line, basically. So I do that all the way around the back of the box. I cut off a pretty good chunk. That is going to be where the microfusion core goes at some point. But then just using my Dremel, and I'm rounding off all the corners. The important thing about this is that nothing on this thing is square. And what I mean by that is sharp corners. It's the 50s, so everything is rounded over. So all these corners get rounded over with the Dremel. And then there's these little detail parts on the back here where screws go in here. So I'm just using this diamond bit on my Dremel and just kind of grinding a little recess here. This is when I kind of knew that I cut that panel line in a little too deep, because these screw placement should not be super deep. This is how I grind in where the screws go, the big screws go later. There's a bunch of these on the front and the back that hold everything together. Now I can bust out some of this model clay, this foam clay. So using a little bit of water here on this corner, just kind of getting the foam pre-wet. And then I can stick this chunk of foam clay on here. Even though that bag was sealed, the top part of this foam clay was hard. Not super hard, but just, had a little bit of dryness to it. So that's what I ended up using for this part, because I'm going to sand this and smooth it all out later. Also showing you how you can fix mistakes. That was not supposed to be a bevel there that I cut out. So you can just add a little bit of foam clay in there and fix that up. This is a piece of 2mm foam. Just super gluing this all the way around this part here, just to separate everything. This is after I sanded that foam clay into that, so it was smooth. You can see that patch I fixed there. So that is all smooth. And then this is just a detail panel line here. So just glue all this and then cut it at the bottom where you're not going to see the seam. Now we can move on to the front box. So cutting off the bottom here, you can see my pencil lines. Front and the back both get cut. The front is a little bit more important because that's where the panel and everything is going to go. So that piece here is some 5mm foam that gets glued in, and we cap it just like we did with the back. So there's an inside piece here. Then this piece of 2mm foam makes up the like fin thing that goes on the front. This holds the tube like rail system thing at the end. I glued that together first because I thought it'd be easier just to stretch it. Turns out that's not true, so I cut it apart, and now I could really like go through and make sure that that fits on there perfectly. Biggest thing is making sure that those seams line up that are cut sideways. That's what it glues to the body on those seam lines. So then I go ahead and just using some super glue, glue this in place. You can see how that slides in there, and those fins kind of overhang onto the bottom. Speaking of fins, now we can go ahead and glue all these fins in. These fins are a little bit different shape because they have to match this panel. So these are a little bit more complicated, but some of them are just a little trial and error. Even with a pattern, they can fit a little bit differently just because of the foam can get a little wonky. But you can just trim a little bit off the back of these if they fit weird. So that is one side done. Then there is the center one. That's like the easiest one to put on. It just goes in the middle. There's this little panel on the bottom that I cut out of some 5mm foam. And going into my little bin of pre-cut circles, I found a couple little circle things, little rivets, just to glue on the front there. Now I'll cut the actual barrel there, the firing hole where the laser comes out. And then I'm using my blade, and I'm doing I'm doing score cuts all the way along the top, bottom, and side of the box, and using my heat gun here to open those panel lines up. So going back to the body, I glue on 2 extra chunks of 10mm foam to the sides, to the front of the sides. That is for the vent. So I drew on here where the vent needs to go, and I'm just using a razor to slice through the vent. And then that way you can push this panel in, and that is how the vent is made. Basically, all those extra chunks do on the side there is make it so when you look inside the vent, you see foam, not just where it ends. Plus, it also stays inside the box. So just like I said before, everything is beveled. So first thing I'm doing is just kind of cutting off the actual corner, just to kind of cut down on sanding. And then I can go ahead and I start by sanding these seams, making sure these seams are perfectly smooth, and kind of removing the glue too. Then I can start it on the corner and really try to round the corners over. I use this really fine sanding sponge, and I go over that corner. This kind of gets rid of sanding lines and kind of almost polishes the foam a little bit. and then I heat seal it after, and it looks pretty good. So there is a panel line that goes here on the body. So again, same technique, scoring it with my knife. There are two panels on top. This seam goes all the way down the top on both sides, meets up with that panel line that we cut just a minute ago. This is tricky too, because doing this to open up the seam looks great and it works good, but it also can open up your glue seams. So I always kind of just go back through after and kind of re-push all your glue seams together. So there you go, that's how the front goes on. I'm actually gluing it on this time. So just using contact cement to glue these together. It's hard to make sure that these are both like super parallel when they get glued on. So the back goes on, as you can see, where it has a little bit of extra like thickness all the way around. And that's because this is beveled. So I glue it on first just to make sure that the bevel fits perfectly, so the bevel perfectly matches to the body. If you pre-beveled this, then you'd have to try to glue it on and match, and it would just be it'd be a lot harder than just gluing it on, cutting a bevel in, and then just using your sanding stone here just to kind of smooth it. Just kind of smooth it down to the body. So I'm just kind of grinding it. Then we cut out the rest of the panel where the microfusion cell goes. And now we need to fill in where we cut these panels out. So the inside of the body gets a couple little walls in there. Then the outside, I'm just using some 2mm foam, same thickness as this panel, and just gluing it on the top, knowing that it'll get trimmed up later. I can glue it in at the top and then glue it on the bottom and just turn it. And I'm also kind of curving it in a little bit so that the fusion cell sits in there. This is some 5mm foam. This is another panel line that gets glued around. This is a little 2mm detail piece that gets glued on the top. This is going to be where like the reloading mechanism goes. These are some little 2mm detail parts that go in there. This I sculpted out of some foam clay. It's just a little greebly, basically. It's where the wire goes at some point. And again, these are just 2mm rectangles that get glued on the top. Okay, now we can grind in the screws. So all these are going to be screw heads. So just using this grinding bit here and just kind of pushing those in. These are some vents on the top. Same thing, grind those in place. On the back of this gets a screw. It also gets a little grinded in first, using some foam clay to kind of make this little screw. I'm actually using a star bit, just pushing it into the foam just to give it that finished screwhead look. These are some little fin pieces here that go on the side. This 5mm foam cut at 245 bevels to make like a little triangle. So this is how I made the micro fusion ammo. So this is just some 5mm foam glued together. So make the little tube, then I cut out the top and bottom pieces with 10mm foam. And then for the top is the same thing. It's just another piece of 5mm, but thinner. That gets glued and cut together. Same thing, I cut out top and bottom out of 10 for that. Using this sharpened piece of PVC pipe, I can cut out a perfect circle. That gets glued on the top. Same thing with this. I have all sorts of different size pipes, copper, PVC, just to cut out perfect little circles. Using my old micro fusion as like a guide. And then I can go ahead and bevel the top part. So using my sander, I'm just beveling that into like a circle. Same thing on the body, I kind of bevel the top so it kind of tapers. And then I go ahead and glue the top detail in. These things are basically just like, oh man, I think they're basically just batteries, but they're kind of like nuclear batteries because it's Fallout. So I think that's basically what they are. It's basically it's a fusion cell. So it's like what gives the thing power, but it kind of mimics a battery look. I think that's like how it makes the connection into the gun there. That's why this top part here kind of looks like a battery. But yeah, so these are just some 2mm detail pieces here. And I just glue these all the way around the top. Give it that cool look. And apparently I needed one more. So the very top gets beveled. So that's that piece you saw me cut out. But now I am sanding the edges down to give it this little bevel look. Now the top can get glued to the body. And then all those 2mm pieces of foam get sanded down. Just beveled all that stuff in. So this is part of the loading mechanism here. This part of the 5mm needs to be cut so that the holding thing can fit in there, and then this is like the reload handle. Going through my bin of wires, I found this like perfect yellow Ethernet cable. So I don't even have to paint this. Before, I've made these out of wires and painted it white and then painted it yellow. But yeah, I didn't have to do that with this, so that was really great. This is some really thin foam. This is like 1mm foam. And all I'm doing here is I'm just using the wire as like a placeholder so that I can use these as the wire harness, like clamps. So just gluing these down on both sides of the wire. and then I can just slide the wire out of there. And it keeps these like perfect shapes. So now we can move on to the stock. So you can see how much detail we put in, and that was just like the top part. So now we gotta do the whole bottom part. So this is a foam core board, and I thought like this would be a pretty good idea to give it the skeleton underneath. It's still not as like sturdy as I would hope it would be. I think your best bet honestly is just some really thin plywood or something like that, but it works for what I made it for. So I cut out that foam core, then I'm skinning it with 5mm foam on top. So then move on to some of the detail. These are like those, man, I don't even know what to call these things. Basically, I just cut them out and I bevel the corners. I sand everything down to taper. I drew a line on top so I knew where to sand to, because there is a flat part on top and then the rest gets beveled down. Then the inside gets these little circles that I cut out. I cut a circle inside them that gets heat sealed and opens up and makes like a little circle panel. Yeah, and then I just glue these in place here. Everything I kind of show you guys too is on one side, and then off camera I do everything again for the other side. So that is always fun, knowing that you have to do it twice. But usually your second one is better. So start on the side that you're not going to see the most, and then your second one will look better and you'll have a better idea on how to do it, and then you can use that on the side that it's going to be more prominent. Yeah, and then those little circles get glued on the inside. This little 2mm panel line up here. All we're doing now is we're just building layers. So same thing with here. This gets a layer too. We're just making panels and building up layers just to make it look like it's got a little bit of different thicknesses to it. Yeah, so this piece is 10mm foam. It gets this little rectangle cut out of the front, and then the whole bottom gets sanded and beveled over round. And this goes up here in the front. That's where the grip goes eventually. Again, using some PVC pipes, I cut out these circles here. I use my little bucket of rivets and glue those in place. This is the trigger, and I'm heating it up first so that I can put it on top of this little panel and just kind of press it into shape just to give it this little bend. Yeah, then I can move on to the circles in the stock. That's the other thing too, is this stock is supposed to be like super thin, and if that's not bad enough, then you cut out like majority of the support in the back to really make this like not like thick. You're kind of cutting out like all of your support material. So yeah, so I just use these circle cutters, and this cut's super easy because it's just foam and foam core. And then I go through with my sanding bit and giving all these a bevel because everything is beveled on this thing. And it does look a lot better. The bevel cuts look a lot better. Cut out this panel where the trigger will be pulled, and cut out this panel. This panel is for decoration and also to make the overall support weaker. Just using a little sanding disc just to kind of reshape everything, make sure everything's rounded over and smooth. That trigger gets glued onto a 10mm circle, and then now I'm just kind of positioning it in place, and that gets 2 rivets on it. I think these are like what helps it like move. 5mm foam here on the top and bottom of the stock. This first layer is just to thicken it up. These little details, circles go on the top on both sides. Now this 5mm chunk gets cut, this little strip gets cut out. And then I also cut out these little strips are the same thickness. So this gets glued onto the back. And this gets glued right on top of that other piece that we glued on. And then this part gets glued up here all the way to the body. You can see I kind of bevel cut it to fit in there a little better. And then all these sections that we cut out, they get glued up in here. I tried to use one as a spacer, but I think that spacing was too thick. So if I did this again, I would do it more by eyeball, which is kind of what I did. I took one off and just kind of eyeballed it. Then I kind of bevel, I cut this tapered in here to kind of meet back down to the body. I sand in this little circle where another detail bit gets glued in. So this is the grip using 4 pieces of floor mat foam, gluing those all together, cutting off the corners, sanding down the corners. This little 5mm detail gets glued in the front, and it also gets this little circle in the front. And then the actual grips glue into place here. These are just some 1mm foam. Cut these strips and cut the curves in the top of them. I just kind of stick them in place and just kind of glue them around their curve. And just do that a bunch more times. Now for the scariest part, cutting the body. Yeah, cutting the body open, so that the stock can fit inside the body. That's kind of how I designed it. I designed it a lot taller, so that you have a good base up in there. So basically the foam core base goes in there. And then, just kind of push that into place and contact cement everything in there. The grip gets contact cemented in place. That kind of helps hold it in. I use some foam clay to smush and push into the seams on the bottom. It's because that foam core doesn't sand super smooth. This is a foam dowel here, or not. Wow, this is just a wooden dowel that I cover in foam. So I just glue and just roll it into place, and then the extra I cut off and using contact cement nail. These are some 5mm panels that I glue onto the, I believe this is the front. This might be the back. It's hard to remember looking at it. There's so many panels and stuff on it. But yeah, so the reason that I do that is because if you just use the foam, if you just use the wood dowel and then on top you just put foam panels and painted it, you would see the wood texture through the paint. So if you take wood or even PVC, because PVC would be like super smooth after it's painted. So if you take PVC or wood dowels, you wrap them in 2mm foam. It makes it a little thicker, and also makes everything the same texture. So everything on here when it's painted is foam. So it all has the same texture when it's plasti dipped. But yeah, so I just keep putting panels on here just to kind of match the look. And again, these panels get beveled, so they get rounded over a little bit. So I'm just kind of doing that slowly. You can see honestly though, like what a difference that makes. Alright, so the back part here gets this little 10mm detail that has also been beveled. And then this little circle bit gets glued on the back. And then some 1mm foam strips get glued on that, just to make these little fins. And then I just kind of cut them in place once they're glued on. And then I'll cut them again too once they're dry. This little part here gets the same fins. And then the front of this also gets this little fin. And then I glue that in there. Yeah, and then I glue that to the bottom of here. And we're like getting like so close to having this thing built. If you guys are still watching, I really appreciate it. This is a really long build. It took me a long time, and it's a lot of detail, and it's hard to skip over like showing you guys stuff. I wanted to kind of show like every little bit of detail that I put in this thing. If you're trying to make your own, I hope it helps. And yeah, so this is just a little, again, this is just another 1mm foam panel that I wrap around here. It kind of hides that seam. It also helps hold that to the stock of the gun. This is again 1mm foam, just a detail panel lying along the side. These are like little like holder things. These like hold it everything. I loaded up Fallout 4 and like held a laser rifle and looked at it in my inventory and looked at like every side, so I kind of see all the crazy parts that go on it. These are the fins that go along the body. So I cut this out of 2mm What the foam because it's a lot sturdier. And now again I cut in these panels that weaken it. And then that's these glued right along the bottom of the body here. And that is it. Now you can plasti dip it. So I gave this like 4 coats of plasti dip. Gave it this nice black look. And now I go through here with some silver. And I just give this thing a full dusting of silver. I'm not trying to like cover this completely with silver. I'm just kind of misting it. And Microfusion gets painted a yellow. I mixed up this custom green in my airbrush. I recently was just at Lowe's the other day and I saw a camo, like military green spray paint, and it looks pretty good, and it's like a matte, and I wish I saw it before I did this, but it's alright. I like the way this green looks, if I'm being honest. I just don't like using the airbrush for big stuff like this. I just feel like I don't have control, and yeah, I just worry about the finish, but it looks good. And I put like 3 coats of this on. And then, it all gets weathered anyway, so it's like, what, who cares? So I use my vinyl cutter to cut out these stickers, basically. These are the things that go on the side. Yeah, so then I'm just using the vinyl. Originally I thought about just kind of making a stencil and painting these on, which I've done before. But I think, in production, if you were making a bunch of these, like in the world of Fallout, I feel like they would use a vinyl or a sticker and just put these on here. So that's what I did, and I like the way they look. So I just start with these 2 stripes, caution stripes here that go all the way down. And now we can put the other part on. I looked up too on the actual game model. This is only on one side, which kind of bums me out. I think in Fallout 3 these were on both sides, but not on 4. They're just on the one side. But I love it. It's such a great look of like the laser radiation, like caution logo, and also kind of shows you like which way the laser goes. These like arrows. Yeah, so then I mixed up some of this like custom brown. Again, I think this is like Army Campbell brown or something. And just yeah, I paint the whole grip this color. And there's this other little lever here that gets the same brown color on it. So I just paint a couple coats on both of those. I did cover everything with a clear coat, just to help seal the paint and unify everything. And then also it helps for when you're about to weather stuff, so that the weathering doesn't soak into the paint. It sits on top. So yeah, putting this Ethernet cable in, gluing that into the front part here, and then gluing it to the back part. And then for the weathering, I use brown and black. And then watered down pretty good. I start with these little handles here. I weather these first. Just kind of brush paint on and then just kind of dab it off with a microfiber cloth. So when it comes time to the body, I paint a pretty good amount of this paint on, really trying to work it into all the corners and seams and cut lines and all that kind of stuff. And then I go through it and just kind of lightly dab everything off. I didn't want this to be like super rusted, but it definitely has this like textured parts of like old metal. So you can see the difference here. Like this side's weathered and this side's clean. I mean, it's a pretty drastic difference. It goes from looking like glossy painted foam to more of a metal texture. So I dumped out my big bucket of screws and just kind of looked for some screws that were the right size. I was going to paint these on, and then I thought that like real hardware would, one, be quicker, and two, look a little better. So yeah, I just kind of glue these on. Or I literally just use my screw gun and just like screw these into the foam. And they just like are totally fine. So there's these little ones in the back. And then these ones get screwed in at an angle into the front and also in the back panel the same way. And then the real hardware kind of helps with the realism too, it makes it look a little cooler. So we can finally glue in the reloading mechanism. So this is like the little part here that actually holds the fusion cell in. And I believe this is the lever that like you would pull this lever and it would release the other lever so that you can pop the fusion cell out. And then this thing goes on the bottom, and I really don't know what this part does. It looks like a lever to do with like the mechanism, but I don't know. It's kind of redundant. It's kind of weird. So I'm not 100% sure what that does. So I taped off the fusion core to paint the top black, and as you can see, it is pulling a lot of the yellow paint off back down to the silver base. And at first I was kind of bummed out, but I just took some yellow paint with my brush and just kind of brushed it on top, and it ended up helping it look like it was just faded. And then I can go ahead with my red paint, and I paint this little line all the way around. This is kind of the time. Well, I mean, the whole thing is a time sink, but this part here, like painting these letters and stuff by hand, takes a bit. I tried to cut these out, but they were just a little bit too small, and I couldn't get the letters to cut out good enough. So I said, well, I'll just paint these on by hand. So I paint on these these arrows first, and then I can go ahead and paint these the caution words on here. This is basically just letting you know that if you throw these into a fire, they'll probably explode. So that is good to know. Yeah, and then like I was saying, how these kind of mimic batteries. The top and bottom get a plus and minus. That way you know which way they go. Even though the arrows, and it's pretty self-explanatory, with the top being this big black part with an actual like knob that would connect to the thing, and the bottom being flat like a regular battery. But it's cool. It adds to that look. Yeah, so the top is white, the bottom is black, and yeah, there's also some more markings on the top that I paint in white. This is just kind of telling you like the capacity and like how much juice is in here, basically. Now I'm taking just a sheet of sandpaper here, and I'm just rubbing it on certain parts, knowing that this will like knock the paint off. Because I didn't want these letters to look like they were just painted, even though I just painted them. This is one of those things, like, as like a prop maker, it always hurts. Like, you spend so much time adding details and then you cover them up or sand them off or weather over them. Yeah, and that's it.
Alright, so there you have it. That is how I made the laser rifle from Fallout 4 and Fallout 3, but the one from 4 is a few different parts. But that is basically it. It is a really fun build. There is a lot of details on this thing, specifically like all the fins and everything. That it's like, when you think about it, it is a long rectangle with a couple things on it, but then you start adding just tons of detail to it. So, but yeah, that is it. I really love this thing. Ever since I first played Fallout, I love the design of this like futuristic 50s square laser gun, and yeah, I love it. And I made one a long time ago and I ended up selling it. This one I think I'm going to hold on to for a little bit. I also have another half the top piece built already, and I'm really thinking about finishing that one and painting it like the Vault-Tec style that you can do in Fallout 4. You can do like a Vault-Tec. I think now there's an Enclave one, which would be kind of sweet too. But anyway, that is how I made the laser rifle from Fallout 3, all out of EVA foam. And yeah, now I can patrol the wastelands.
Hey guys, I just wanted to pop in here and say thank you for watching the entire video. I know this video was super long. You know what's funny is last week I did that Gizmo Ghostbuster video and I was like, dude, this video is like 40 minutes. That is like crazy. And then I put this video all together and it was like an hour. So yeah. It's a little crazy, but I wanted to make sure you guys like see every little detail that goes into making this thing, and I didn't want to cut anything out, so I kind of kept what I think is like the most important stuff. Yeah, so anyway, go to James's page, Rebel Base Builds. As of right now, he does not have his challenge video out. He's really busy doing stuff and he will put it out eventually, but my video was kind of scheduled to come out on this day. I have other stuff in the works, but keep checking his channel. He's doing it was a full community challenge build, and there's lots of entries, and he's gonna do his own video, and then the end of it he's gonna show everybody else's stuff all together. So it's gonna be super cool. I'm super excited to see what everybody else made. And yeah, so just check out his channel. Make sure you go over there and yeah, subscribe to every his stuff. He's part of the Star Wars Room Builder community, and yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. So he also gives out like tons of like cool 3D files and stuff. So like if you're a patron of him, he if you're into Fallout, he just did like the vault door like 3D print file. So if you go over there and you become a patron, he has a ton of like really cool STL files. So check him out. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time we make something cool.